But for more insight on the latest on the war, let's speak with Hussein Banai, Associate Professor of International Studies at Indiana University at Bloomington. Professor, Donald Trump criticizing the UK, Spain for being what he says uncooperative since the US launched those strikes on Iran. I mean, does this moment underscore a structural shift in transatlantic relations, especially as we're seeing what it looks like alliances becoming more transactional?
Absolutely. I think this war is really showing how much the underlying structure of the, if you want to call it the liberal international order or the rules-based system that the United States spearheaded and constructed is under stress in this current period. I mean, just by way of comparison, in the 2003 Iraq War, the United Kingdom was a steadfast partner of the United States in that war. You had a coalition of the willing of mostly Eastern European countries, but even when Western European countries disagreed with that intervention, there was nowhere near the level of rhetoric that we see coming out of those capitals today. And of course, the President of the United States, as your report just showed, is wielding a very hard economic hammer here as well, punishing countries that might not be nice to his way of conducting this war with further tariffs and sanctions as well.
Prof. Banai, I want to ask you about the bigger picture right now, the war entering its fifth day. We have President Trump saying everything in Iran has been knocked out, command and control. Is that what your sources are telling you as well? Because that would suggest Iran's military is no longer functioning as a cohesive and coordinated force. That is what, I guess, seemingly attacking its neighbors on an ad hoc or, if you like, small unit basis from the ground?
Well, it's strange credulity once again. I mean, I think if you listen to what the president said just 8 months ago after the 12-day war, Iran's defensive capabilities, its even missile program was severely damaged, its nuclear program obliterated. And the White House has turned around and said that Iran, in fact, posed a significant threat, both nuclear and through its ballistic missiles. So any kind of information we get out of the White House about this or the narrative coming out, we have to really subject to critical scrutiny. But in terms of Iran's capabilities, from everything I've observed and heard, is that the Iranians, since the 12-day war, put in place multiple layers of contingency precisely for this kind of moment, that their command and control structure would be severely damaged, that leadership would be eliminated, and for them to be able to absorb as many blows as possible for about a week and a half or so until they could then maybe resurface and try to hit some key military assets of either the United States or their neighbors. And I think that plan, we're seeing it's coming into operation very slowly in terms of attacks on neighboring countries, but not really overwhelmingly. And time will tell how prepared the U.S. is once this initial round of bombing, after 7 or 8 days, passes, when they have to reload their stockpiles, whether they're prepared for those waves of attacks by the Iranians.
Professor, Trump has also acknowledged that the risk that regime change in Iran could produce leadership that he says could be as bad as the previous person. He's also suggested that top moderate candidates in Iran may have been killed in the strikes. What does this reveal to you about the administration's strategic clarity regarding what its end game is in the conflict and how long this conflict will last? And you also said recently, I think in a Canadian publication, for an opinion piece, that what produced the war was not simply Tehran's conduct, but the Trump administration's inability to decide between containment and regime change.
That's right. I think there's very little clarity and a great deal of confusion and incoherence coming out of the White House. The two nodes of policy you just mentioned there that I wrote about are really in conflict, and you get that message kind of in a remarkable way out of the president, even as late as today in the press conference in the Oval Office that he gave, where he basically was almost thinking through his options, saying, well, containment is possible. Maybe we'll work with someone from inside the regime, but also we'd like to see the regime gone. And I think that conflict, that fundamental incoherence itself is born out of the fact that for the first time, and this is very important to note, since probably at the end of the Second World War, there is no policy process driving White House's strategy. It is the president himself and his whims and impulses when it comes to deciding what the next move is.
Prof, Lebanon, the latest country to be drawn into a war it didn't start nor wants to be part of. So I'm wondering, beyond, if you like, Iran's immediate neighbors who have been targeted, for having U.S. bases and for what Iran perceives they have done, is it possible that other countries could be ensnared in this so-called horizontal escalation as well? And I don't mean just militarily, but in other ways as well.
Absolutely. I mean, the impact of this on the oil markets, as your report at the top of the hour just noted, is already being felt. I mean, Iran knows that by striking at oil refineries in the Arab Gulf monarchies, for instance, it could really shift the game at an economic level, gain leverage in that way, insert uncertainty to the global markets that, of course, the first victims of would be the regional countries themselves. But beyond that, I think heightened sectarian tensions, we could see those blow over in countries like Iraq, where there's a significant Shia population that the regime in Iran for years nourished and paid for. Shia populations in Saudi Arabia. In Lebanon, Hezbollah has been active, launching rockets, and Israel has been conducting operations to pacify them as well. So there is life left yet in Iran's proxies across the region. And I think the Arab countries are really wary of the longer this goes, the more instability will be visited on them as well.
Understood. Prof. Banai, one thing that will be felt or is being felt already, even if we're thousands of miles away, is oil prices. We know that Trump, you were talking about this moments ago, ordering the Development and Finance Corporation to provide insurance and, even offering to escort tankers through the strait. I mean, is that something you think is going to work? Or is it more, some sort of a psychological buffer, if you like?
Yeah, I think more of the latter. I think logistically, Iran has very few cards to play, and one of them is the Straits of Hormuz. This is the one area where the Iranian Navy, and Iranian Navy is not just ships, there's a lot of underground mining activity that they could do in a clandestine way. This is the one area where they've been running a lot of training exercises. They know that controlling that a specific strategic choke point is going to be the way they can get the attention of the rest of the world, get the Asian countries to start dialing up their embassies in Washington and European capitals, and where the high price of oil can be felt in supermarkets across Western economies as well, et cetera. It's hard for the United States to offer some sort of insurance scheme when they're the ones who have instigated this conflict in the first place, because that insurance scheme tells the countries, you can buy insurance from us and then we'll provide protection. It's not providing protection for free. And I think that has some companies worried that it's just rhetorical tactics right now by the White House to calm the markets over the course of the next day or two as they carry more bombing campaigns across Iran and see where the picture ends.
All right, Professor, thank you so much. Nice talking to you on the show today. Hussein Banai is Associate Professor of International Studies at Indiana University, Bloomington.